So, hi everyone. My name's Aaron Hoven, and we're talking about conflict and trust building in distributed environments. So, you can tell our discussion was pretty chaotic. I'm going to try and structure my response. First, I'll give you the bad news about distributed environments. Then I'll give you, excuse me, the good news. And then finally, I'm going to leave you with a timeless question that we couldn't really answer, but thought was interesting. So the first, and actually I'm going to take a cue from the guy, I think Jeff Gothelf, from the ladders, and use colors. So conflicts of interest and goals lead to a lack of trust. That's the problem that was really central to our discussion. And with distributed teams, whether they're agencies dealing with clients or internal to a single organization, we found that there were a variety of conflicting interests and conflicting goals that were fairly intractable. And some of them could be solved, but the majority of them had to just be dealt with and lived with. So that is a problem in any organization, but it's a particular problem in distributed relationships. So one of the problems that was really inherent in distributed relationships is a lack of transparency. And the lack of transparency combined with the conflict of interest and the conflict of goals often led to a lack of trust. And we found that this lack of trust got worse and worse the longer the conflicts of interest and the conflicting goals that are inherent were unaddressed. So an example was a department in India working with a company in New York that was part of the same company. Basically, the New York side felt that the India side, even though they were on salary and not necessarily trying to pick up money or anything like that, was sugarcoating their bad news and basically doing political type manipulations to make themselves look better than they were, and that was the problem. The agency types who are on billable hours or a project basis would generally try and get more work because they would get more money by doing more work, so generate hours. Those conflicts of interest exist and they're not going away. We also found that the problems are not just distance. There's a team in New York dealing with a remote team in Pennsylvania that had major issues holding people accountable and just getting the team to sort of all row in the same direction. We also found that not just distance either, personal relationships often got in between this conflict resolution. So I think that's the bad news. Let me make sure here.
And joint retrospectives don't work.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Having both sides rehash what happened is not very effective at resolving the problems. It generally leads to, particularly over email. Right? We've all lived through that. So now I'm going to talk about the good news. So the first thing is to figure out what's the real agenda for everyone. So to kind of agree on some type of common goals that exist despite the conflicts. One particularly good solution is transparency. So an example of this is over-disclosure, or being extremely upfront about what you're doing, when you're doing it, why you're doing it, and having kind of continuous feedback. So we called it over-communication, and that seems to work really well in the distributed relationships. Then the second thing is to address conflicts early. Everyone knows they exist. If you try and pretend that everything's fine, that's going to be problematic, and those problems are only going to get worse and worse. Again, transparency really helps. And we also decided that the more you can processize the transparency and have that be something that is not a choice, that's very helpful. And then cultural issues. This is kind of obvious, I guess, the way I've been talking, but conflicts and interests of goals is very bad. This is a problem, 2 minutes, that you're not going to be able to gloss over or paper over. It's something you're going to have to deal with, and it's unpleasant, but it's really important that you deal with it. One thing that we all felt is that face-to-face interaction is really, really valuable, as is establishing, and this is hard to quantify, but some type of personal relationship where you're comfortable talking to the person, kind of period. So not necessarily just about development or just about management, but almost as if you're work friends or friends. And that seems to make a huge difference in having difficult conversations, and we didn't have a magic formula for that. Everyone agreed that FaceTime helped a lot, that talking a lot helped, and let's see, cross visits, so not just having one side travel to the other side, but having sort of cross-pollination was very helpful. And this is really thorny and actually important. Is everyone feeling that they're equals? So, and this kind of got grouped into cultural issues, but a common complaint, and this is even within US, is that one part of the team felt like they were being talked down to by another part of the team as a group. And that was really problematic, and kind of playing upon what the guy this morning said, led to obligation, resentment, and that whole chain of bad effects. So if you get the feeling that parts of your team are feeling talked down to, you know, we all kind of agreed that the problems of that, they're significant no matter what, but in a distributed environment, they could really fester. Tricky, and this is not very easy, but you need someone to push through the conflicts. But we also found that that's possible to do, and all it really takes is sort of seizing the day. And I think that's about it. So the timeless question is, if your team still has conflicts but is able to deliver, are they actually practicing Agile? And we actually didn't have a good answer for that, because we had examples that kind of went both ways. So that's it.
Thank you.